Right. I think we all know what an open plan office is about. It's one big space with many, many desks, but no partitions and no walls. And this space is supposed to host a lot of different work activities, like doing your focused work, but also having a meeting with a coworker, and maybe also taking this video call with your friend overseas. So who of you has ever worked or is still working in an open plan office? Or for the students here, who has ever studied in kind of a space where other activities were also taking place? Can you put your hands up? So that's a lot of people. And that kind of convinces me it's still a very popular architectural layout because it's quite cheap. You can do a lot of different activities in one single space. But of course, it comes with some issues. So of those who put your hands up, I don't think that many of you will be surprised to know that 4 out of 5 people who work in an open plan office have at least one complaint about their environment. And so they complain about the noise of other people talking, about being visually disturbed by people passing by, about not being in control over simple things like the temperature or the light. And this is not just discomfort. Some researchers claim that people can work inefficiently about 1.5 hours a day because of these disturbances in the office. That's 1 day in a week that people say that they're being disturbed and not doing their work in the most efficient way. And that, of course, has many more repercussions, because that makes people less inclined to want to come to the office, which kind of leads to less opportunities to collaborate with coworkers. And that makes your whole work organization also less resilient, right? Because you don't have the people thinking about the next challenges. Now, architects are well aware of this problem, and they have come up with a couple of solutions to it. One of these is called a flexible office. In a flexible office, all the office furniture can be moved around. That means the building manager or the workers can actually change the layout to mitigate the visual and acoustic disturbances depending on the work activity that is actually taking place. Sounds like a perfect solution. But research shows that people don't really like this kind of office. And that's because they don't really know what the best layout is for a given work activity. They don't like to move around and do all this physical effort day after day. And they also don't like to ask permission of their coworkers to actually move the table or move the shelf. And can I really move this thing around or not? Now, a second solution is called the activity-based office. An activity-based office consists of different spaces and rooms, each of which is specifically designed to host one work activity in the most ideal way. So typically you would have like one zone where you can work in a focused way, you would have like a meeting room, you would have a brainstorming room, you might have cubicles where you can do your video conferences, you might even have like a chill out corner where you can relax. Of course, this layout is much more expensive because you need much more space. But also research shows again that people don't really like to work in such an office, because they have to make reservations to actually use each one of those spaces. They need to walk around from one room to the other room, and that also disturbs people. But they also report something that is called FOMO, fear of missing out. They fear that they might be in the wrong room, missing out all the good gossip. They fear that their boss might not see them work when they're not in the same room. So these two layouts are not really ideal. And that brought us in our research group to the idea that we have to reinvent these kind of architectural layouts. And we wanted to create a new paradigm that combines the advantages of the flexible office with the activity-based office. So basically, it's an office that is able to adapt flexibly around the people, instead that the people have to all the time adapt around their office. And that's why we call it the adaptive office. So imagine you are doing focused work in a silent zone, and somebody comes by and wants to meet you. The whole space should change into a meeting room. When you have a video call, the space should maybe change into a cubicle that insulates you and acoustically, so you're not disturbing other people. Now, how can we do that? So we had to kind of think about a new technology that is able to change the layout in a flexible way, in an autonomous way. So that's why we created the robotic wall. So here you can see our prototype So basically, it's two acoustic panels on the top that are mounted on top of a mobile robot. And a mobile robot consists of a battery and of a computer, two LiDAR scanners, so it can kind of measure the environment, and that makes it able to move around autonomously in a human-inhabited space. Just like a Tesla car, but then much slower and in an office. So we have the vision, we have the technology, and now, of course, we're very curious whether it actually would work and people would like it. So I'll tell you a little bit more about 3 studies that we have recently done. We're doing many more, but let's talk about these. In the first study, we deployed our very first prototype in a communal space in an office building here in Leuven in De Hoorn and the Tevaartkom. That communal space has 4 zones, and for each zone we designed one location where the wall could be, somewhere optimal, somewhere not optimal, so we could get like fair reactions from our participants. And here you can see our very first prototype, still like a white box, very lightweight. We're using a very cheap robot that is actually controlled by hand with a joystick by one of our researchers in the next room. So people would believe that it actually was moving in an autonomous way. And here you can see it move. Of course, it's sped up, but if the person would sit in the relaxed zone, it would, for instance, block the view to the stairs that are behind. Here the person is disturbed by the light from the sun, and the robot comes and helps her out. And kind of the results were kind of very good, in our opinion, in a way that people understood what the wall was trying to do. It understood it was trying to help them, blocking out a view or the acoustics or creating a more consistent zone so they wouldn't see things that were not relevant for their work activity. And that all without having to use a screen or like a face or a voice or things like that. Even more, people started to trust the wall. So here you can see the wall creating a workspace and people following it. And the next one, you can see the lady kind of seeing the wall creating a nice nook, and she was willing to move herself and kind of also appreciated that she could watch outside, for instance. So here we can prove that the wall was able to nudge, the location of the people. We went like one step further, and we put the wall in the middle of the space. Because then we thought, people who were just passing by, the visitors, would actually approach the person sitting on the desk, and they might be more inclined to socially interact with the person. So here you can see the person passing by, and indeed, many of them were stopping and saying, how are you doing, and how is it going, things like that. So here we could prove, actually, architecture can also change the social behavior of people, potentially, right? So in this experiment, we determined the location of the wall. But we were also curious, well, if we would give the freedom to people, how would they want the wall to behave? So in our next study, we deployed the wall in an administrative office at the KU Leuven campus, where about 5 to 15 different secretaries were invited to control the location and the duration of the wall with a simple app. And here you can see the latest prototype that we have move around in this office. It's very slow because we don't want to disturb people. It can go much quicker, but I think that people won't like that. And we're very proud that it can make these corners. It's a very big robot. It's 1.8 meters, and it has to kind of maneuver itself in these very small corridors and chairs and desks. So we're kind of proud of this little feature that it can do that. But basically, so it can move autonomously, right? We didn't have to control it at all. The people were controlling it. Then after about 5 weeks, we looked at the logs and we interviewed people to see, what happened. Some obvious things happened. People were using the wall like we expect to control acoustic and visual disturbances. But people were also doing things that we didn't expect. So for instance, if somebody would make a noise in the office, people would call the wall towards themselves to protect themselves. But some people also called the wall for other people in the room, because maybe, they were thinking, maybe she's like more disturbed than me, or maybe she forgot to call the wall. So they were using the wall in an altruistic way. Some people did also something remarkable. They actually sent the wall towards the person making the noise. From an acoustic point of view, that's perfect. You should kind of block the noise where it's kind of created. But that, of course, also alerted the person like, oh, maybe I'm making a noise. I'm disturbing somebody. Some people find that kind of socially too confronting. Maybe it's typically Flemish, people told me, but And then that would mean that they would put the wall there before the disturbance was happening. So you could see people were strategizing in two ways. They were thinking spatially, trying to protect themselves or attacking the person making the noise, or in terms of time, putting the wall there while it was happening, alerting the person, or maybe, be safer doing it before it actually was happening. In our last study, we were a bit more ambitious in that sense that we were using multiple walls. So here you can see the setup, a very small office with 3 people. One person we asked to engage in a video conference as a person in the red with his little lightning symbols on there. We could kind of compare 2 different spaces. One is the blue space, which is more architecturally interesting, like a rectangular space. The other one is more like a cubicle, right? Creating an enclosed space around the person who was being disturbing the other ones. We also were interested if the scenography, the way that the walls moved, could, for instance, also nudge people. So one of our experiments was to open up a transient space between people, opening up the viewpoints between each other, and maybe that would nudge them to talk to each other or work to each other. So here you can see some footage taken by a hidden camera, and the person with the red t-shirt on was engaged in a video conference. So you can see the 2 walls moving, trying to create a cubicle around that person, actually creating the layout on the fly. Always we left an opening, of course, that the person would feel safe, she could leave at any point in time. But architecturally, you can compare this kind of layout with this kind of layout, which is a bit more, more common and also allowed the 2 people to more enjoy, for instance, the view from the window outside. And here you can see the experiment where we try to create a scenography where the 2 walls open each other, the 2 people would see each other, and that kind of nudged the person with the blonde hair to get up and collaborate with that person, which actually is an informal meeting, so also disturbing the other person, so we had to create a cubicle again. But it gives you an idea how this space could be like a fluid, more symbiotic collaboration between people and technology. So that they could work together and create this real adaptive vision that we have in mind. So now I've shown you the sort of first prototype of the adaptive office. We can start thinking if this is really feasible, but we can also think about what we can learn from the current practice in the buildings that we are already using today. And I think there's a lot of challenges that we have to tackle, because we know that, for instance, a smart office is not already performing like expected. A very simple example of that is a window shade, the sunshade that blocks the sunlight. For us, it's the most simple robot that we can kind of imagine. It goes just up and down, depending on the amount of light that comes from the outside. But we know that almost nobody really likes how it performs, because it goes up and down regardless of how many people are inside, what they're doing. If it's a tense meeting or they have like a social interaction, it doesn't matter. The thing is doing whatever it wants, and regardless if they actually like it or they prefer it to do this operation. And so for us, it means that we have to rethink completely how people interact with the building. And we should allow people to give feedback to this technology. Tell it, what they like and why they don't like it, so it can learn from our preferences. But maybe also the other way around. I think these technologies should be able to communicate with us, telling us why it's operating in the way it does. That brings us to the next question, that we should, I think, much more become aware what the impact is of these technologies. Right now, we just measure the amount of light that is blocked by a sunshade or by our wall. But we should actually measure the impact that it has on the people, on the productivity, on their health, and on their well-being. And then we will discover that some people don't mind to sit in the sun because they would like to see outside. And some people actually would like to sit more in the dark. And once we realize that, we can start thinking of distributing the effect in an equal way among the people, instead of the practice today, which is just controlling the whole workplace, the whole floor, the whole building based on one arbitrary temperature value, humidity value, and lighting value. Which brings us back to the beginning of my talk, where I tried to convince to you we should really try to avoid as much as discomforts as possible, because it has potential grave consequences for the productivity of your whole workplace. That, of course, is not really completely true. Some discomforts can have a positive effect. Getting up from your desk can kind of reset your thoughts. Walking through a long corridor gives you the chance to discover new people and talk to them. But our research shows it's mainly an architectural problem. So I hope that architects will take up this responsibility and not just design buildings that are optimized in terms of its structure and its energy use, but they should think about optimizing also the way that people socially interact with each other. So I think there is also a big opportunity here for autonomous control, because in the beginning I told you the flexible office and the activity-based office are not really performing very well because people feel socially embarrassed. So I think here maybe a robot can take on a more objective and explainable role in taking over these actions, and so people will be less socially embarrassed. So overall, I hope you now realize that the adaptive office is not just a bunch of robots just trying to block visual and acoustic disturbances, but it's actually about a new way how technology and workers can collaborate together to create a much more healthy and engaging way of work and way of life. In that sense, we would really like to make an architecture that is much stronger than our static and traditional counterpart, in one of which you sit today. So we think about making an architecture that welcomes you in the morning, maybe by opening up, that communicates to your coworkers whether you are having a deadline or you're socially available, that nudges you to get up once in a while, but also an architecture that points your direction to the window once the sun falls through the winter clouds. And that's the architecture we're building today. Thank you.